And as I said in the introduction, that is the voice of the great Dennis Cometti, one of the greatest broadcasters in Australian and world sports. This is Aussie Footy Rules America with Eddie McGuire, Brian Taylor on Sirius XM, Dan Patrick Radio, Channel 211. Dennis Cometti, welcome to our show. What an honour it is, as always, to speak with you, mate. Great to have you on board.
It's great to be with you anyway, guys. And BT, good to see you. And good to see the boys, too. I can see them in picture already, so I haven't seen them for a couple of years. But nice to be here and talk about a good song.
The guys we're talking about are James McKenna and Billy Schleifer IV, who are, of course, part of McKenna. We'll get to them in a moment. Before we do, though, Dennis, what are you doing to my boys, Collingwood, over there in Perth at the moment? We've got us sleeping in motorhomes. You've got us. You've got the cops knocking on the door every 5 minutes. You won't let us train. What is going on with you West Australians at the moment against our beloved Magpies, mate? What are you doing to me before this game on Saturday night?
Play a bit of tennis, Ed, actually. I said tennis will take out the strain and the nerves. I'm not sure what they're doing. I haven't been following them too closely, but they need to improve a bit. This will be an interesting game for them, won't it?
It will be, yeah. I think the boys are ready to go. Starting to find a little bit, running in a bit of form. I was pretty happy to see that Geordie DeGoey got through his second game. Always good the first game. You always a bit sore the second game. Had a nice little break, and there's a good feeling of camaraderie between the Collingwood team. Having said that, the West Coast Eagles have got everything going for them, and they are a very, very good team. So it's going to be a cracker of a game between two teams that have got a pretty good rivalry these days. Amazing
year too, isn't it? Like no other, really. And it needs a good song. It needs a good song this year. So, but no, I think what they've done, the AFL, is quite remarkable to get through and play the games. I didn't think they could do it, to be honest. I thought it was always going to be a problem to get the games in. Now, they had to break for 3 weeks, but they came back. So good on them. It's been a remarkable performance by the AFL. And hopefully the footy in the finals lives up to what they've done. They deserve a bit of a legacy, the AFL people.
All right, let's bring in a couple of your old mates here with us at the moment. James McKenna, New England-born singer-songwriter, and Billy Schleifer, who is the guitarist, producer, and mixer. Dennis, just set up how you guys became friends and how it ended up that these two American guys, James wearing his Collingwood jumper proudly today, turned up and sang in front of 105,000 people at the MCG. Billy looks.
Beverly Hills.
Billy is. Look at him. He is. Have a look at Billy. He's the quintessential rock star here. Good on you, Billy. You are sensational. I want to be your groupie. You are just too good.
James McKenna fits in that Collingwood jumper too.
He does.
He's a man of the people.
He looks every bit the Collingwood person.
Just needs to bulk up a bit in the gym, but that's okay. That'll come with more guitar playing. Well, I listened to some music back in 2008, to be honest. I sort of, you might remember I was a disc jockey for a short time and played professional football as well over here. Hardly professional, I wasn't, Brian, in those days.
Oh, no, you were a pro.
So I had the two things going on at once, and I really was very proud of myself. I had a real strut as I walked around Perth, but it's been knocked out of me since. But anyway, I was listening to this music, hence my love of music. I was listening to some music on the internet, and I heard James's album, and I really liked it. He reminded me a lot of Jackson Browne with his phrasing. And as a result, I contacted him. We got together. I went over there initially, and I was going there anyway, and I just looked him up, and we had a meal, and we got on pretty well. The girls got on pretty well as well, from different generations, but it was good fun. And anyway, I went back. They came over here. I asked them to do an album for me, and they did that. Nothing to do with footy. And they came over. I took them on a pub tour. This was early, I think, late 2009. And then the following season, I suggested making a footy song. And James, bugging me, I mean, he did very well. He just came up with this footy song. He didn't know it. A bit of help, I've got to say, James. How many words did I contribute? About half a dozen?
Well, you definitely half a dozen, but all the thinking that went behind it came straight from you. Well, we got to go over there in 2009, leading up to the 2009 Grand Final, and got to play some great pubs and even Federation Square. And we said, if we're going to do this, we should write a footy tune. We got there on like Monday morning, jet lagged, and Billy said, we need to write a footy tune. So we sat down with Dennis for a couple hours in his hotel, went from our little hotel room to his big hotel. And then we talked about footy and what it means, and, wrote a verse and a half. The next day met the band to say, by the way, we have another song to learn. And, by Friday, that Saturday night, Federation Square, we played it, and we're like, hey, I think this is good. So we went back and recorded it and came back the next year just so excited to be part of it.
I think the big aim at the time was, Dennis was really big on trying to come up with something that was going to take, footy into more of a global phenomenon. And so when we were, the thought behind the song was to come up with something that was very, anthemic and universal, like sort of like a U2 type song or something to that effect.
I think it's fair to say we needed a song for now. That was the situation. I mean, I've got nothing against Up There Kazali. I mean, a great song in its way, but suddenly we were parked a fair way from the present day, and I thought perhaps we could do this with the song. And I think to a point it worked. I was disappointed with some of the support we got, but at the same time, I think it was well worth the exercise. And look at him, he's so smooth, Billy. I can't get over it, isn't it? That is archetypical LA.
I got my makeup person right in the next room,
Okay, well, it's great to see you both anyway. And they were really good times. We had a lot of laughs and a lot of frustrations at times too, but it got done. I think that year we were sort of aiming a little higher, but you sang at the grand final. Unfortunately, the first one was drawn. So you were downstairs, and also they had a problem with the toilets, didn't they? So as a result, they'd gone over. I hate to sort of say this to a national audience, but the toilets in Australia, no, they're pretty good. No, not always. But anyway, you came out with your guitars above your head, and it was a draw, so you didn't get to sing that day. You paid a healthy price, and you came back the next week. I remember seeing you, and for a moment or two, in fact, I was calling the game, and in the last 3 minutes, it ended in a draw, and I was thinking more of my band. So when you listen to that call, if it's a bit absent-minded, I was thinking of the boys downstairs.
Well, don't worry. I was thinking about everything else that was going on. Now, at the time, Dennis, as you said, the Collingwood Football Club were playing against St Kilda. The game was a draw. We had to come back and play the game the next week. Collingwood prevailed, and it's great to see that James is wearing the Collingwood jumper today. You had Last One Standing. It was a great song, as you said, going back to the original Up There Gazali was back in 1979. So it had certainly grown a few hairs on it by that stage. And this was a great new song that we got behind on Triple M, and we lobbied for the AFL, and eventually you guys were able to sing it. Now you've done a remix of it for 2020. Now, I love the fact that the Pies, Collingwood, are in the finals. It might be a good omen 10 years down the track. Let's have a listen to Last One Standing. This is McKenna.
Late October, the whole world's seen a change. But for just one night, our hearts beat for the game. With our heads held high, our backs against the wall. When the clock runs out, one side takes it all. We are the favorite sons. We take our places in the sun. We are the chosen few. We gave it all that we had to. We are the last ones standing. We are the last ones standing. On the Gabbers field, we play for victory. Oh, no second place, just ain't no place for me. With pride on our side, the crowd screams out our name. At Wollongabba, it's not just a game. We are the favorite sons. We take our places in the sun. We are the chosen few. We gave it all that we had to. We are the last ones standing. We are the last
Here.
That's McKenna with Last One Standing. And guys, I've got to tell you, the last time I heard that song being played live was actually the soundtrack to the greatest moment in my life. And it really does just give me a shiver and makes me feel really emotional today hearing it. I remember at the time because, I love Dennis Cometti. I've loved working with him, and I love what he was trying to do in getting you guys together to give us a soundtrack, a modern soundtrack, and then to watch my boys, my Collingwood Football Club, bring that Premiership Cup home and do the lap around the MCG after 2 weeks of grand finals. We were the last one standing. We were the last man standing. And just listening to it this morning, it's just wonderful, guys. And I love the new remix. I love the fact that you've gone to the trouble of bringing it up to 2020, make it really poignant to what we've gone through in this season. I think it's fantastic, and I'm going to play it on Triple M all through the final series. It's just great. And you know what? I hope, Brian, you can get on to your friends at Channel 7 and tell them, remember Dennis Cometti, the greatest caller of all time?
Yes.
He's come up with something pretty good. Now, that should be somewhere in the grand final coverage at the moment. But seriously, I hope you guys realise just how much it resonates with somebody like myself as the president of the Collingwood Football Club that day. People often ask me, Dennis, was that, when they say, how does it go in your life? I said, it was the greatest day of my life. And they say, well, what about the birth of your kids? And I said, yeah, but I had both of them with me, one under each wing, holding my wife's hand, and we celebrated something that we all love and never, ever forget. Now, I don't know whether another premiership comes our way or not, but we got one, and that song was the soundtrack to it. So congratulations, guys. It means an awful lot to us.
I've just got one question for Jim. Can I ask Jim one question? Could you do that for the Super Bowl? I know February's hard to rhyme, but that's the one we're chasing now. That's the flip side.
Yeah, that's a big task, but we can see what we can do. As a New England Patriots fan, this is the first year they're coming to LA twice, and everything. There's no audience for COVID, so they're gonna be 10 miles from my house, and I can't go to the games. But I got to go to the grand final, and that was one of the greatest days of my whole life.
Well, actually, two.
What was it?
I'm sure.
Can I actually ask you guys? I mean, look, Dennis obviously set it up for you because you have to understand the motivation to write the lyrics and the song to go with everything that was happening there. What was it like for you to walk into the MCG? You were pretty much sight unsound, apart from watching the game on the television things, to walk in that day and just feel the energy because it was pent up. We'd had the draw. It was a big build up to that game. Everyone was on the line. I mean, for us at Collingwood, to lose that game would have been devastating. It probably would have been the end of my career as the president of the club. I don't think I could have gone on another step for Collingwood. And it was so emotional for us. Could you feel it that day when you got in there?
I think the year before when we got a taste of it with the crowds in Federation Square and seeing that, we thought we knew what we were getting into. And then we got there and we did the parade. So that was, 50,000 in the square and 150,000 in the streets. And we were looking at each other like, what is going on? This is amazing. And then, I think what helped it was that Dennis was such a calming influence. Like, don't worry, boys, everything's fine. And everybody was so nice. Everybody was no matter who we talked to, people in restaurants, to the Mongrel footy show, which was the first thing we did when we went over there. We went out to Geelong, people in clubs. People were so welcoming. It made it a lot easier. But I don't think anything in my life prepared me to walk out on that stage and see that sea of people. That stage was right over the tunnel where they come out, and we're there, and there's fans on three sides of us, and they were going crazy. I don't know if you remember, I had a special guitar that Maton had painted up with the Collingwood colors on it, and everybody wanted their picture with that guitar. And you just got an idea of how much it meant to people. And it was fantastic to just play one small part of it. And I think there was some hesitation around, well, there are Americans coming, but this is Aussie's big day. I mean, I think, when we got to this is not about us. This is about footy. It's not about us. And we're just happy to have one small part in the celebration of the game. And I think, for us, that helped us get through it. And also, it helped you get through the fact that we didn't get to play the first time. Well, it's not about you. It's about the victory lap. And with no victory lap, there's no victory song. But I think. And
Billy, what was it like for you, mate? Because you had to push aside a guy by the name of Lionel Richie to get up onto that stage and just say, hey, Lionel, can you just move out of the way, buddy? Here comes McKenna.
Well, I got to be honest with you. For me, and I'm a big sports fan in general, but just, the MCG itself, how big it is compared to, most of the stadiums here in the United States. It's, I was speechless, and we came there obviously the year before, and that was a very big treat. And but one of the big things for us was we got to bring a band of a group called the Wellingtons. They were a local Aussie band, and these guys have been AFL fans footy fans their whole life, and this was just as big an experience for them, lifelong fans. So I really, I felt it myself, and I'm sure James did as well. But to see, our mates, who are locals there, just this was like a lifelong dream realized for a lot of them, and that was very special, and it meant a lot to me. And hearing your words as well, that definitely touched me big time.
And Billy,
Not just fans, Collingwood fans. They're Collingwood fans.
Yeah. Hey, Billy, one thing was getting entertainment at the MCG is one thing, and I think big artists look at it and they go, "Oh, it's just too big a venue. 100,000 people there, but it's over a huge area." Did that in any way intimidate you guys?
It's hard to tell, to be honest with you. I mean, I think out of all those things that day that probably stood out the most, the first match, was when it ended in a draw, and I said, what now? Because the thought never occurred to me that a final event of a sporting event could possibly end in a draw, and so to me, a lot of that was a blur, but it was just like I said, it was more just about the emotion of the sport, and I think about how the U.S. and how they put so much attention on the halftime show for the Super Bowl and such. But what I realized was that the footy fans were, it could have been it was Lionel Richie, it was In Excess, it was us, but that wasn't the important thing. The important thing was the match.
Good on you guys, and Dennis, can I ask you just to wrap up on this? Last one standing. I like that new version, and I hope it gets a run here at the AFL Grand Final. Everyone listening in Sirius XM, I really think this is a fantastic anthem for the Super Bowl, largely because, as the guys have just beautifully articulated, it is actually pitched at a football game as opposed to a rock band or a superstar landing there playing their song at a football game. This is about football. It actually taps into the psyche of everybody who's involved. And that's why I get emotional about it, because, when you get to that last game, when you get to the game that matters, this is the one for the Super Bowl. This is the one for the grand final. There's nothing else that gets between you. And you actually got the DNA of what the feeling is like, from the president to the player to the boot starter to the supporter to the member. And Dennis, I really wish you all the best, and I love that your persistence on this, because it is a really good song, and I just hope it gets going.
Good on you, Ed. Well, the song exists, doesn't it? So we've got half a chance. I mean, we're in first, looking forward, but of course, who knows what will happen. They've come to the same sort of conclusion that we have, that it's a year like no other in the NFL as well. So hopefully they get to where they're going. I think the problems in America at the moment are far greater than ours. It seems still to be out of control in some places, but hopefully they get to play the Super Bowl, and it would be wonderful if these two guys were able to sing on that day, or have anything to do with that, really, because they were both treasures to work with. We sort of had a lot of good times when they came over. They made a lot of friends. They love Australia, but of course, Americans at heart. So it would make so much difference, I think, in their lives if they had something to do with that Super Bowl. So I wish them well, but just great to see them again too.
Finally, Dennis, if you could just, to our American audience on Sirius XM, just tell them what Grand Final Day and the final series means, not just this year in an amazing COVID-19 sense, but for you as a player, as a young boy who, grew up loving Australian football, Brian, who was, of course, a sensational footballer, and me as a commentator, but a lover of the game and a president of a club that I love. Just wrap it up for the Americans who love their sport so much, what it means to us here in Australia.
Well, I think the key is, I live in Perth, but the key is the game is played at the one venue every year, the MCG, which is a great ground that seats 100,000 because of the nature of the game, really. The ground is so big to compensate for how many players are on the ground. You can't have a small pitch. Now, gridiron much smaller, and gridiron goes from city to city for their Super Bowl. I think the tradition of Melbourne is fantastic. I think walking down to the ground on that day is fantastic. All of Australia holds their breath. It's a bit like the Melbourne Cup. We have a horse race like the Kentucky Derby, and the Melbourne Cup is something that, again, goes to Melbourne. Now, Sydney is said to be perhaps the most popular city with Americans. Melbourne, similar size, more cosmopolitan. It's just great down in Melbourne. I love being there for any sporting event because they are sports mad. And the grand final this year isn't there. It's up on the Gold Coast in the sunshine because of COVID. But nevertheless, anyone who performs on that day, and I think they've been calling for volunteers at one stage. Anyone, not anyone, but volunteers to provide some of the entertainment. Good luck to everybody up at Wollongabba, but let's get it back to the MCG as soon as possible.
Good on you, Dan. And joining us actually after the break is the Mayor, Tom Tate of the Gold Coast. He's going to tell us just how the Gold Coast and Brisbane, Queensland, Australia, has saved Australian football. It's been a pleasure to have you guys on. James and Billy, thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us from the United States. Dennis, you're over in Perth. Brian's in Melbourne. I'm on the Gold Coast. Rosie's in Melbourne running the show for us. And we're broadcasting right across America on Aussie Footy Rules America with Eddie McGuire and Brian Taylor. Sirius XM, Dan Patrick Radio, Channel 211.